Hello, my name is John Rose, and this video is especially for those of us who've been on the hero's journey for a while, and we've been studying the obstacles on the hero's journey. We want to have a better grasp and understanding of that. This video will also be for those of us who are new to the hero's journey, and we're eager to learn how our brains have been bombarded by bullshit, which is why we're in the mess we're in today. And this has everything to do with what Dr. Herbert Shelton once said. To paraphrase Shelton, along with detoxification comes de-indoctrination. Because he knew he'd been trying to get this message out for a long time. I always find comfort in reading many of his words because he's been through this. He knows the agony of what it's like to deal with the status quo.
This was a video I did several days ago. And I called it Hell's Angels Join the Boy Scouts. And in this video I'd like to show you some of those comfort quotes that have helped me so much over the years from Herbert Shelton. And I think it's important for all of us to understand what people like Herbert Shelton and others have gone through to put things in perspective. So I'd like to read some of those quotes. We'll start off with the very first one I have listed. Our task is a difficult one. We must not only persuade our clients to resort to measures that are unpopular and sometimes unpleasant, but we must also try to de-indoctrinate them. Detoxification must be accompanied with de-indoctrination. And that came from Fasting for Renewal of Life, pages 167 to 168. Excuse me. The next quote comes from Fasting for Renewal of Life also on pages 306 to 307. One of my favorites. Correction is always distasteful to the truant child, says Trawl. Consequences are never to be desired, although always inevitable, when we have been the subjects of misdeeds. It is the ungrateful task of hygienists to point out to men and women what are their misdeeds. Yeah, indeed. No one wants to be told they can't do something they want to do, and they don't want to be told that they have to do something they don't want to do. I don't want to go to school, I want to go swimming. Don't tell me I can't go swimming. Don't tell me I got to go to school. And then we really get into ones that really have given me much comfort, because these are the ones I'm really talking about right here. It seldom happens that the reformer reaps the benefits of the reform he introduces. Men are slow to understand and still slower to act, but this does not deter the man or woman who possesses a genuine love of his fellow man, and whose desire for the betterment of the race is no mere sentimental pseudo-religiosity. Rather, he bravely faces the disappointments he is sure to experience, and with courage and determination advances the cause, which, as he sees it, stands for the liberation and enlightenment of his fellows. Are you guys catching what's going on here, people? He has a genuine love for his fellow man. This isn't some mere sentimental pseudo-religiosity. We're talking about how to make the world better. And he knows that there are going to be lots of disappointments. He understands that. The revolutionists must pay a price, often a big one, for the privilege, the greatest of all privileges, of awakening his fellow men to a realization of their errors and educating them to an awareness of a better and nobler life than that which they have formerly known. Men who cast aside the conventional prejudices of their age and country, and who dare to proclaim and live up to the truth which they perceive, seldom receive the esteem and respect they deserve. If they are sincere and courageous, they care not for the personal discomfort, those disappointments, which the announcement of their message brings upon them, but carve out a way for themselves. And the last two quotes are coming from The Science and Fine Art of Natural Hygiene. First one's pages 417 to 418, and then the next was on 418. Now moving down, actually earlier on in pages 17 to 18, few readers perhaps fully understand the difficulties that attend the effort to introduce new, radical, and revolutionary principles to the world. It is not easy for men to discard ingrained errors and lifelong prepossessions, nor to comprehend truths which conflict with the accumulated prejudices of 3,000 years. Very few individuals, once professionally educated, can ever be wholly divested of the theories of their schools. If the principles of the hygienic school are true, they overthrow all the teachings and destroy all the practices of the medical schools and render useless all of their great libraries of accumulated lore. More than this, their general acceptance will destroy a number of great commercial enterprises that are among the most profitable enterprises of the present era. Now, when I read this now, this means a lot more, or this means different things to me now that I've learned a few things. And it makes me think, well, I wonder really if Shelton really understood everything. And then, to answer that question, let's take a look at this quote that comes from Superior Nutrition on page 9. And I mentioned this in that video I started off with a little while ago. In fact, let's bring that back up and continue on where we were.
And what he said is that the biggest obstacle we have in health reform on this planet or in this country is not just ignorance, which we got a bunch of, but the main obstacle are the people in charge. It's the status quo that wants the status quo to stay the status quo.
Okay. The greatest obstacle to living reform in the earth today, the greatest foe of dietary reform, is not ignorance, of which there is much, but the desire of those who profit from the present evil practices and the means of carrying them on to continue to reap rich financial harvest from pandering to the many harmful practices of the present conventional way of life. We are in serious need of economic and agricultural revolutions. Basic changes are required before we can hope to give everyone the materials for a better and healthier life, and before we can hope to reach them with the information that they need in order to make use of those materials. So long as our channels of public information and our educational system are in the hands of the, at present, economic royalists, so long as they conceive it to be their duty to serve the special interests of these private owners of the earth, rather than to serve the interests of the people as a whole, the truth about health, disease, and healing will make slow progress in reaching the people. You see, this is why T.C. Fry changed his quarterly publication in his career from the Wellness Messenger to the Freedom Networker. He realized that the problem is we don't have an avenue for the presentation of our information. Well, the internet's changing that up a lot. But otherwise, the private owners of the earth own and control every major sector of human endeavor so they can brainwash the masses. So yes, we are ignorant, but and it goes back to what Moses said in this Seeing Teachings from Enoch to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Two main obstacles: the ignorant masses and the arrogant rulers. These are the obstacles we're up against. So that's why I always try to address in every video how important it is to go upstream so we can get reconnected, but then we have to realize the difficulties in getting this message out, the obstacles on the hero's journey, the people who control the information. And we have to deal with this damage that's been done to our society, where we have all this false information, and then we have money being used as a tool to control everybody. Now, what I was thinking of up here, more than this, at first I was thinking, well, does Shelton not realize it's not about the money? It's really not about the money, folks. And this is what I'm thinking, or this is what I realize now that I didn't realize back then, because I've been studying as many pieces of the puzzle as I can to make some sense out of all this. And I now know it's not about the money. It's all about the control. Money is just the tool that's used to control us. And I'll show you in just a few more files how that's been done for a long time. So it's, again, it isn't about the money. It's all about the control. And in order for all of that to happen, it has to do with health. So now let's tie that into, before I branch off into what I was just saying, how I'm going to go into those files, let's take a quick look at Voltaire. Now this came from a book by Will and Ariel Durant, The Story of Civilization, of the Age of Voltaire. This was a volume 9 of an 11-volume series. This was like a 900-page book. I was walking in the mall one day and the book just jumped off the shelf at me as I was walking by the store, and I jumped inside. Let me digress just for a moment. I'm going to come down here and show you. When I opened up the book, the very first words I read in the book, it just caught me, the first thing that caught my eye. A few doctors dared to undermine their income by spreading the knowledge of preventive medicine. Now, this was at the top of the page, and then I glanced at the bottom of the page, and the next quote caught my eye. This remarkable provision of the germ theory left no mark on 18th century therapy and had to be revived a second time in the 19th century. Now, Voltaire lived from 1694 to 1778. So he lived to be 84 years old. And I'm going to digress just for a quick moment and bring up a file. And this is really a major digression, but let me just get this file out of the way, because this sort of confuses a lot of people. We think, oh my God, we're living so much longer now. Not really. This is a timeline of Greek and Roman philosophers. I created this a long time ago to illustrate how long people were living. Well, this first guy, he lived to be 90. And when we glance throughout these numbers, you're going to see a lot of people living to be 90s and 80s. Some only made it to 60, and maybe not even that. But still, you can see that we're not living any longer. The reason why we don't live as long, or why we weren't living that long 100 years ago, because we moved into the cities. We haven't figured out that we had a plumbing problem and had a lot of people dying of childhood diseases. If you made it through childhood, you lived just as long as everyone else. So we're not living that much longer because of modern medicine, but that's what they try to make us think. So now let's go back to Voltaire. Now this is on page 600. Again, those quotes I just told you about was on page 592. Let's go to this quote right here. This is what the Durant said. Voltaire was critical of medicines. Regimen is superior to medicine. And of most doctors, out of every 100 physicians, 98 are charlatans. But he added, men who are occupied in the restoration of health to other men by the joint exercise of skill and humanity are above all the great of the earth. They even partake of divinity, since to preserve and renew is almost as noble as to create. Now I'd like to stop and reflect on that thought for just a moment. We live in a sick world, folks. No one has escaped this world without being damaged somehow. So for all of those people who are out there trying their hardest to tell this message, be kind to them. They've got flaws. They're not perfect. Don't go picking at them when they're doing something as great as partaking of divinity. If they're helping people preserve and renew their health, think about this. Are they going to have flaws? You can find flaws in everybody, right? So when you look at people like Doug Graham or Lauren Lockwood or Brian Clement, these guys aren't perfect. They're going to have flaws. Are they worth mentioning? Well, let's put things in perspective. If you're out there doing the same thing, maybe. But, give these guys the respect they deserve. Again, what did Shelton say? Seldom receive the esteem and respect they deserve. These people are damaged like everyone else. They have their own flaws. But look what they're doing. They're devoting their life to helping humanity. Now let's continue on with Voltaire. This is one of my favorite quotes. Doctors are men who prescribe medicines of which they know little to cure diseases of which they know less, and human beings of whom they know nothing. And then one of my all-time favorite quotes of all by Voltaire. Every man is a creature of the age in which he lives. Very few are able to rise above the ideas of the time. That's why when I say we need to rise above the ideas of the time, I'm making reference to Voltaire. Now, let's go back to where I said I'd talk about some files, and then I started digressing. The private owners of the earth. Now, what are we talking about here? Economic royalist. Remember, T.C. Fry changed his quarterly publication from the Wellness Messenger to the Freedom Networker because he realized the greatest obstacle wasn't the ignorance. They needed the knowledge, but we didn't have a way to get it out to them. There wasn't an avenue for to present this information. So let's see what files I have next. Let's go to this one right here. This is my file on Shaman. Now let's take a quick look right here of this article right here, The Politics of Health. Let's go back a little further. Since the time of the earliest shamans and witch doctors and healers, it became apparent that the control of health and sickness was a position of power. Now, who said that? That's Dr. Tim O'Shea, the Doctor Within website. I've made reference to him before. I really like that guy. He had it wired, didn't he? Well, now let's take a look at this. Ooh, now this is good. This is Natural Hygiene, Man's Pristine Way of Life. This is by Herbert Shelton. A new revolutionary situation. Actually, the so-called medicine man among the Indians was a sorcerer or shaman and practiced no healing art. See, this is how they attacked us from the very beginning, remember? Since the earliest shaman and witch doctors and healers, it was obvious that it was a control of health and sickness. See, everything in our society revolves around us being sick. The first the con artists were the shaman. They were sorcerers. They're magicians. There were sick psychopaths that are taking advantage and exploiting the sickness in man. Now, let's see here. Not by the corrupting influence of the shaman, priest, and trader. I might as well read this. Not by divine revelation, as so many have claimed for their discoveries, but by a close and careful study of nature did all these men come to their knowledge. Hygiene represents a return to that pristine mode of living that emerged with man when he first appeared on the earth. It is a revival of something precious that had been all but lost during the course of ages, thanks to the corrupting and perverting influences of shaman, priest, physician, and trader. These, with their false symptoms and false teachings, have led the race astray. When and where ignorance and superstition have prevailed with all their mind beclouding and debasing influences, their disease and crime abound. So that's Herbert Shelton. Now, where can we tie that into? Let's go to my file on magic and magicians. Is that quote in this file? You bet it is. Here it is right here. Actually, the so-called medicine man among the Indians was a sorcerer or a shaman. And again, this is Herbert Shelton, Man's Pristine Way of Life. This is my file on magic and magicians. I showed you this file a while back. I'll put a link down to this where I showed quite a few of my other files where I connect all these things together. And again, here, look at this. Let me see. The Knights Templar magic, again, sorcerer, for by sorceries were all nations deceived. That's Revelation 18:23. Sorceries, drugs, chemicals, black magic. Magic, when it's black, is harmful to us. So when you look at the word sorceries, it ties into the word pharmakeia, ties into medication, pharmacy, magic, by extension, a magician. So our pharmacists and doctors are magicians. They're giving us drugs to give the illusion that they're solving our problems because they interfere with our body's communication system. And voila, it's magic. No more symptoms. So let's move on and show you. I wanted to show the connection with the Knights Templar. And what the Templars found were the forbidden books of magic. Through this treasure they learned the secret arts that the Illuminati was built upon. They, the Templars, see I'm color coding it red, or actually the evil is red, have used these arts to climb up the ranks of all powerful positions of our world. And they have done so by worshiping Satan. They have willingly sold their souls, and through the occult rituals, pledges, and contracts of secrecy, this knowledge is kept hidden. Their knowledge is never written, but passed through symbols, rituals, and architecture. So remember, the Knights Templar, what they did is they, well, I guess I might as well go to Usury. Before, it should be in there. Let me pull up my file on Usury right here. This will make sense. This is where I wanted to go. Again, this is my file on Usury. And you can see I've got a lot of related files to it. I have the best of a file preview. Charging excessive interest is called usury, blah, blah, blah. Centuries ago, usury was defined as any interest charged for a loan. Modern usage is redefined as excessive interest. That's what I was taught when I went to college over 40 years ago. Now there's no such thing. This is where we want to look into right here. This so-called clash of civilizations you're being told about by the corporate media is really a war between banking systems, with the private central bankers forcing themselves on the rest of the world, no matter how many millions must die for it. The constant hate mongering against the Muslims you see in the corporate media lies in a simple fact, like the ancient Christians prior to the Knights Templar. Muslims forbid usury, or lending the money at interest. I mentioned this in my video the other day. that the Knights Templar, again, they found the books of underneath the Temple of Solomon. They were the first bankers that we had. Remember, Christians did forbid usury, and the Muslims still do. So let me finish this sentence. Or lending money at interest, because they saw in ancient times, like Rome, how these banking practices could destroy an entire society. And that is the reason our government media insists that Muslims have to be hated and killed and converted. They refuse to submit to currencies loaned at interest. They refuse to be debt slaves. That makes them a threat to the natural order of the world, the new world order of global fascist dictatorship. Remember, 2 countries proved to the world that we live on an abundant planet. At the same time, the rest of the world was starving by design. And we attacked them and said they were the bad guys. Anybody who's ever attacked is usually against usury. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Okay, now let's go to another file, and moving from usury, let's go to Albert Pike. Now, who is Albert Pike? Well, he was an American general, and he was actually considered the #1 guy in the Freemason in America at the time. So this is from the history of the House of Rothschild, 1871. An American general named Albert Pike, who had been enticed into the Illuminati by this Italian guy, completes his military blueprint for 3 world wars and various revolutions through the world, culminating into moving this great conspiracy into its final stage. First World War, destroying the Tsar in Russia and attacking the religion, taking down Christianity, replacing it with communism. Second War, going after Germany. Third War, check it out, is to be played out by stirring up hatred of the Muslim world for the purposes of playing the Islamic world and the political Zionists off against one another. While this is going on, the remaining nations would be forced to fight themselves into a state of mental, physical, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. Remember, the people who rule the world are con artists. They have to distract us. Remember the MO of a psychopath. The way they attack is divide and conquer. Again, in 1871, the blueprint for 3 world wars, they knew about this for a long time. Okay, now let's move on. Again, it's all about usury, isn't it? You see the connection, Albert Pike. Now let's take a look at this book right here. This is Capital by Karl Marx. Karl Marx, since this file's all by Karl Marx, if I highlighted in magenta that we're talking about Karl Marx, he found it in his hatred of usury and moneylenders, a passionate feeling directly related to his own money difficulties. Hegel's followers were all varying degrees anti-Semitic, and in 1843, Bruno Bauer, the anti-Semitic leader of the Hegelian left, published an essay demanding that the Jews abandon Judaism completely. Marx's essays were a reply to this. He did not object to Bauer's anti-Semitism. Indeed, he shared it, endorsed it, and quoted it with approval. But he disagreed with Bauer's solution. Okay, now, let me see. What I wanted to show you in this was Martin Luther. I don't know if I have this going to the right place. Nope. It could be, actually. That's how I found this initially. Let me come back this way. Actually, I tell you what I need to do. This will be in my file preview, so let's go to the top of file and come down. Here it is right here. This is by Martin Luther. Now this is in Karl Marx's book. So here's Martin Luther, and look at all the references. Taking the usurer, that old-fashioned but ever renewed specimen of the capitalist for his text, Luther shows very aptly that the love of power is an element in the desire to get rich. The heathen, I'm not going to read all this. Look at all the red is usury, usurer, them, their money, usury, usurer, the money glutton. Usury is a great huge monster, like a werewolf, who lays waste all more of any blah 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 blah. Okay, whatever. So the usurer would deceive the world as though he were of use. Remember, these are magic books, part of the magic books that were buried under the Temple of Solomon. That's why the Knights Templar became the very first bankers for the Christians. So as you can see, usury. In fact, if I do a search in this file for usury, it pops up 58 times in this book. So let's go ahead and move on to the next file, Eustace Mullins, because they were talking about anti-Semites. Okay, now this is his book, The Curse of Canaan. This is the very last paragraph in the very first chapter. By this time, the reader must be thoroughly confused. The Semites are really anti-Semites, are Canaanites. They're heirs of the curse of Canaan, whose corrupt acts are dictated by the will of Canaan. The true Semites are the fair-haired warriors who built one civilization after another. And then, how do we recognize these various forces in the world today? By their deeds ye shall know them. Those who are engaged in murderous conspiracies, those whose only loyalty is to secret international organizations, those who promote the use of drugs, bizarre sexual practices, and criminal undertakings. In short, those who continue the rebellion against God, these are the Canaanites, the anti-Semites. Those who remain true to Christ are the Semites. So what they do, again, the rulers of the world, they're masters of illusion. And this ties into a book by Ishmael. And I should have pulled that file up. Let me see if I can do a quick search, or let me put in Quinn. In Daniel Quinn's book, Ishmael, what he points out is that there are takers and there are leavers in the world. And what happened, Daniel Quinn, the takers, the takers, the takers. Alrighty, teacher, you're a captive, I don't... should have looked at this before I pulled it up. I know I was going to go here. About 2,000 years ago, the takers adopted as their own story that originated among leavers among centuries before. The takers came to adopt as their own story an enemy once told to denounce them, the one told by the Semites to their children about the fall of Adam and the slaughter of Abel by his brother Cain. See, this is page 154, 175, the 239. The premise of the taker story is the world belongs to man. The premise of the leaver story is man belongs to the world. Now, this guy, Daniel Quinn, said it's a story of our agricultural revolution as told by some of the earliest victims of that revolution. He knew that was a mistake, but he didn't know it was the third mistake. We made two prior mistakes. When we had the agricultural revolution, when we started eating plants that were not biologically adapted to eat, we already had two mistakes under our belt. And the first mistake is the fall of mankind. So, again, what you have to understand is that the rulers of the world are con artists. They're going to confuse us. They're going to say, don't call us, you're an anti-Semite, you're attacking us. No, you're not a Semite. You're the problem. You're the reason why we have problems. Now, this is a great book. I highly encourage it. Eustace Mullins, The Curse of Canaan. Here are some other books by Eustace Mullins. I have in my file The Rape of Justice, Americans Tribunals Exposed, The Secret History of the Atomic Bomb, The Secret Holocaust, the PDF file of it. Ezra Pound. Now, he was one of the proteges of Ezra Pound. Two of his other proteges won Nobel Prizes. They didn't give it to Eustace Mullins. In fact, they actually fired Eustace Mullins, the only man ever to be fired from the staff of the Library of Congress for political reasons by a senator who was the president of the Anti-Defamation League. Remember, they formed the Anti-Defamation League the same year they established the Federal Reserve, the Income Tax Amendment, and the FBI. You can't talk bad about the Jews. Remember what Voltaire said. To learn who rules over you, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. So, and then remember, it isn't the Jews, it's the Satanists. They just are hiding within. It's just like as if the Hell's Angels joined the Boy Scouts. Look at the Boy Scouts are doing. It's not the Boy Scouts, it's the Hell's Angels. It's the Satanists. Not all Jews are Zionists, and not all Zionists are Jews. We have to realize Satanists are Satanists are Satanists, and they have to become invisible, so they always distract us. They have to keep us at war with everyone. Now, this is the preface to his book. And I read it to you the other day, but I'll read it to you again. After 40 years of patient study of the crises which fade humanity, I arrived at a very simple conclusion. All conspiracies are satanic. Hang on a second. It's getting light over here, and light is creeping in. My curtain behind me is making a reflection on there. Go back. All conspiracies that didn't work are satanic. In retrospect, this conclusion should surprise no one. I admit that it came as something of a surprise to me. I had never anticipated that my decades of work would lead to such an all-encompassing and unchallengeable solution. This answer had eluded me through the years, not because I was on the wrong track, but because I had not yet consulted the ultimate source of knowledge, the Bible. To trace the machinations of the materialist conspiracy, I had deliberately limited myself to materialist sources, reference material on banking policies, banking, politics, economics, and the biographies of those who were most deeply involved in these affairs. Remember, Eustace Mullins had access to the biggest library in the world. He also wrote the book Murder by Injection, and let me read that preference, as I did the other day when I did a video showing this. And this would be the foreword, I believe he called it. But he wrote it a year later, or it was published a year later. Come on, pop up. Okay, Murder by Injection. Funny, I had this book for a decade and never got around to read it because I already read other books related, similar to it, like James P. Carter's book, The Racketeering of Medicine. I said, I don't need to read any more of that. I already read enough. But yet I really like Eustace's angle on it. Look at the table of contents: the medical monopoly, quacks on quackery, the profits of cancer, death and vaccination, the fluoridation conspiracy, wither AIDS, the action of fertilizers, contamination of the food supply, the drug test, the Rockefeller syndicate. Now let's look at the forward. And let me see if I can't do something real quick. See if you guys can read that. I'm going to see if I can put something over this darn window. I'll know to do this in the future so that I won't have that coming through like that. Did that help? It was well worth the effort, I think. Yes, it was. Good. All right. The present work, the result of some 40 years of investigative research, is a logical progression from my previous books: The Expose of the International Control of Monetary Issue and Banking Policy of the United States, a later work revealing the secret network of organizations through which these alien forces yield political power, the secret committees, foundations, and political parties through which their hidden plans are implemented, and now to the most vital issue of all, the manner in which these depredations affect the daily lives of health of American citizens. Despite the great power of the hidden rulers, I found that only one group has the power to issue life or death sentences to any American, our nation's physicians. Okay, I'm going to close that file and moving on out. What does that say? It says that Eustace Mullins was the grandfather of the Federal Reserve movement. So a lot of people know him from that. But you can tell he studied all the pieces of the puzzle. He understood how the world worked by people using usury to control our monetary system. Then he came to the conclusion that, oh my God, it has to go with doctors. So that's why I say everything in our society of any significance has everything to do with our health, or more importantly, our lack of health. That's why I'm closing these files out. That's why this system has to be controlled. Now, the usury, the way the money works is they use money as the absolute tool of control. Here we go. The Knights Templar forbade usury. Anyway, I don't want to go into that. So again, it goes back to how this is the big piece of the puzzle right here. It's all a magic act. The people who rule the world are tricking us. It's one big con, and what they have to do is they have to control what our doctors know. For by sorceries all nations are deceived. We're deceived. We're misled. So that's why, if you go back to the very first quotes I showed, why I somewhat questioned whether or not Shelton really understood that. Is it about money? Or is it about the private owners of the earth? He knew they existed, but I don't think he understood how important the health aspect was of it. That's how they control us. Again, here he says that if the principles of the hygiene school are true, they overthrow all the teachings to destroy all the practices of medical schools and render useless all their great libraries of accumulated lore. But more than this, it's about all these other industries: the meat industry, the dairy industry, the processed food industry. But it's not about money. All those things, everything, the medicine and food, these are weapon systems that are used to destroy us. And this is the piece that I don't think Shelton was able to come to, or at least I haven't read anything that makes me think he understood that. I'm sure if the internet was available back then, he sure would have found it like I found it. So what is the message that we want to take home from this? Well, we got to realize that it all started from the very beginning. The Shaman, remember Tim O'Shea? Control of health and sickness was a position of power. Again, everything is based on us being sick. And now we have a corrupt system where we pass mandatory health insurance. Let me think. What was the name of that one quote by? How does that quote by Lenin go? I'm going to pull that up in a second. In the meantime, what I want to do is I'm going to finish this this video off, and it's already taking too long. It'll take forever for me to upload it with my slow internet speed. Let me show you my file on conspiracies, because a lot of people can't deal with this. And I'm sure those people aren't around anymore, so maybe I should have started off with this one. Here's my file on conspiracy. 9/11 explosive evidence experts speak out. Well, the reason I love what they said here. It's all about fear. People don't want to know we live in hell. That's what it's all about. In fact, let me very quickly start off this discussion by going here. Let me pull that file up. And if you haven't seen this and you still believe in the official story of 9/11. Oh, that's not going to take because of that. Anytime there's a dash in my system, it doesn't work. What's the easiest way to get to this? I guess I'm just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. Put this back in this way and come to the top. 9/11. There we go. Okay. This was really a good video. This is a must-see video. Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. This is the expert package feature-length pre-released versus 1.3 low-resolution documentary by Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. When these 1,500 architects and engineers analyze what's going on, they're saying there's no way the official story can be true, that Building 7 is the smoking gun. It was obviously wired. It was controlled, demolished. No way they could have done that in time. It was done ahead of time. So if that building was wired, we know they're all wired. And let me think. I don't know if yeah, here it is. See the red? Fear, 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 fear. This section here, they talked about, why are these people having such a hard time dealing with it? Again, it has to do with the fear. Denial protects people from this kind of anxiety. So they simply will not believe something that they fear to be the truth. As I thought about all these responses, I realized that what was in common to every one of them is the emotion of fear. People are afraid of being ostracized. They're afraid of being alienated. They're afraid of being shunned. They're afraid of their lives being inconvenienced. That have to change their lives. They're afraid of being confused. They're afraid of psychological deterioration. They're afraid of feeling helpless and vulnerable. And they're afraid they won't be able to handle the feelings that are coming up. None of us want to feel helpless and vulnerable, so we want to defend ourselves, and the way we often do that is with anger. So then we become angry, and when we become angry, then we become indignant. We become offended. We want to ridicule the messenger. We want to apologize. What? We want to pathologize the messenger, and we want to censor the messenger. Apologize didn't make any sense. So how can we overcome this resistance and denial? The first thing is to meet people where they are at. Again, here's a recap. Trauma, cognitive dissonance, fear and anxiety, denial, lack of humility, pride, exceptionalism. Exceptionalism. Oh, I should have brought that. Do y'all know what exceptionalism is? Let me see. Exceptionalism. British and American exceptionalism. Is this all about blowback? I haven't looked at some of these files in so long. The indifference of Americans to others flows from American exceptionalism, the belief that Americans are graced with a special mission to impose their virtue on the rest of the world. Like the French revolutionaries, Americans don't seem to care how many people they kill at the process of spreading their exceptionalism. So again, British and American exceptionalism. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get out of here. Back to my file on conspiracies. So again, what we see here is the fear that people, one of the reasons why we can't accept conspiracies. But the main reason has to do with what happened with the CIA. Now this file here, it's a 540-page file. These are funny. Okay, how do I tell them? How do I wake these stupid sheeple up? Conspiracy theorists. Wacko kook. So that's what they call people who dig deeper and are actually quite well informed. Sheeple, the ultimate government creation. Conspiracy is a crime, not a theory. Conspiracy, an evil, unlawful, treacherous, or superstitious plan formulated in secret by two or more people. Plot. Bump, 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 bump. What I want to look for here is, here it is right here. Both these findings are amplified, blah, 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 blah. The term was invented. Let me go right here. I'm going to copy and paste this and take it down, and or do I want to go into that? Now let's go. I'll just stay right here. Both these findings are amplified in the new book, Conspiracy Theory in America, by political scientist Lance DeHaven Smith, published earlier this year by the University of Texas Press. Professor DeHaven Smith explains why people don't like being called conspiracy theorists. The term was invented and put into wide circulation by the CIA to smear and defame people questioning the JFK assassination. The CIA's campaign to popularize the term conspiracy theory and make conspiracy belief a target of ridicule and hostility must be credited, unfortunately, with being one of the most successful propaganda initiatives of all time. In other words, people who use the word conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist as an insult are doing so as a result of a well-documented, undisputed, historically real conspiracy by the CIA to cover up the JFK assassination. That puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Here we go. JFK described it like this: "We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy." Now you can hear this speech online, by the way, if you all are interested. "That relies primarily on covert means for expanding its spheres of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit and highly effective machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No secret is revealed." Later, when trying to conduct an investigation into Kennedy's assassination, the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, echoed Kennedy's sentiments when he said, "The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists." See, this is what we're up against, my friends. The people who rule the world know how to trick and fool the masses. They understand what Schopenhauer meant when he said all truth goes through 3 steps. First, it's ridiculed. Then it's violently opposed. Then it's accepted as self-evident. So what happens when you want to discredit somebody? It's real simple. You just laugh at them. It's real easy to laugh at people who are telling the truth and call them conspiracy theorists and think you're right. Why? Because you're on the side of the majority. But remember what Mark Twain said. Whenever you're on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. And I always like to add on to that and ask ourselves the question that would apply at that point. So, the medical profession is a conspiracy to hide its own shortcomings. No doubt the same may be said of all professions. They are all conspiracies against the laity. Until there is practicable alternative to blind trust in the doctor, the truth about the doctor is so terrible that we dare not face it. George Bernard Shaw, The Doctor's Dilemma. Okay, so I'm not going to go into any detail on conspiracies. The point of this is that we have to keep an open mind. We have to realize what Agenda 21 is all about. We have to understand how con artists work and controlled opposition. We have to understand that it all has to do with the dark side of our behavior. And the MO of these psychopaths is to divide and conquer. And if we look at the Fabian Society, let's take a quick look at that file. The Fabian Society was put together a little over 100 years ago, and they realized long ago that, look, man, people are waking up too quickly. If we're not careful how we do this, people will wake up. So they put a long-term plan in effect to control us. The urge to save humanity is almost always a false face for the urge to rule it. H.L. Mencken. Read 1984, George Orwell. Read real name Eric Blair. It wasn't coming from his imagination. He had access to the projected agenda through the Fabian Society. Exactly the same Fabian Society that Aldous Huxley was a member of. And thus had inside knowledge to write a prophetic novel called Brave New World. They were coming from knowledge of what the projection was. Huxley, it seems, supporting it, and Orwell not supporting it, trying to expose it. But it is still the same source of where it came from. This has been going on for so long now. When you look at 1984, written by George Orwell, when it was published, guess what happened to Orwell? He died. Same time. Do I have that in there somewhere? I'm sure I do, but as you can see, the Fabian Society is something we need to understand. The English Labor Society. Let me see here. There's some things in here that will blow you people away. See, crime of 73. That's when they took away bimetallism. 1913. That's the Federal Reserve Act. So there's 40 years there. Fabian Society was founded in 1884. Orwell's book was 1984, 100 years later. Interesting. There are white papers. You don't know white papers. All those are government papers that admit what they're doing. United Nations. I was just connecting dots here. FDA, EPA, USDA. The Fabian Society implements world socialism incrementally through legislation. That's what the Fabian Society is all about. Social change doesn't take place in USA unless the central bankers and their media assets support it. Their long-term plan for world dictatorship is disguised as a spontaneous grassroots revolt. While these movements rectify many genuine injustices, their hidden purpose is to destabilize and undermine American society. Now, Aaron Rousseau had a conversation with Rockefeller, and let's take a quick look at that file. Whoops. Aaron Rousseau. Okay, he produced Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and The Rose with Bette Midler. Okay, Aaron Rousseau talks with Ron Paul. Here's in part of the Zeitgeist. Okay, this is interesting. This was a Nelson Rockefeller and Rousseau's voice. So this is a conversation between, Rousseau was recounting a conversation he had with Nelson Rockefeller. There's going to be an event, Aaron. We're going to go into Afghanistan so we can run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We're going to go into Iraq to take the oil and establish base in the Middle East. And we are going into Venezuela and get rid of Chavez. Aaron Rousseau. And the first two they've accomplished, Chavez they didn't accomplish. Nelson Rockefeller, again in Rousseau's voice, by having this war on terror, you can never win it because it's an eternal war. So you can always keep taking people's liberties away. Rousseau, how are you going to convince people that this war is real? Rockefeller in Rousseau's voice once again, by the media. The media convinced everybody that it's real. The media was bought in America in 1915, and most people are so clueless that they believe almost everything they're told. Okay, going on here. Rousseau, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this? What are the ultimate goals here? The ultimate goal, according to Nelson Rockefeller, is to get everybody in this world chipped with an RFID chip and have all money and everything be on these chips. And if anybody wants to protest, well, what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off the chip. Interesting, interesting, interesting. How about where is the mention of feminism? I guess I could just go to that file. Feminism. Let's just go to that file. Okay, folks. Feminism, feminism, feminism. And okay, feminism was created to destabilize society. While these movements rectify many genuine injustices, their hidden purpose is to destabilize and undermine American society. We just read that the other day. I was just in the other file, right? Social change doesn't take place in the USA unless the central bankers and their media assets sponsor it. Again, I just read that. Rousseau recalls his conversation with one of the Rockefellers, who told him that they created and financed the women's lib movement so they could tax another half of the population, and so the children would be trained by them in government schools rather than in the context of the family unit. The hidden goal of feminism is to destroy the family, which interferes with state brainwashing of the young. Side benefits include depopulation and widen the tax base. Displacing men in the role of providers also destabilizes the family. Now, you talk to any woman and she might find this offensive if she doesn't understand how the world works. If they understand how things work, they understand, like we said before, that these movements rectified many genuine injustices, but there's a hidden purpose. Wake up, people. I'll save it. Okay, what else here? Aaron Rousseau, that's enough of that. How about Agenda, Grinding Down America? Now, that's a really good documentary. That's worth watching. That's where they point out, let's forget the conspiracies. There's an overall agenda. You can tell. In fact, let's go ahead and go to that file. This is a worthwhile video to watch. Basically, as you can tell, what I do, again, darn it, anything that has a dash in it, it won't take with it. And this is the easiest way for me to pull up a file. Instead of going to my list of files, this will find it and bring it right up. Okay, Agenda, Grinding. Again, this is a great video to watch. So again, what I was saying, whenever I study something, I just create a file for it so then I can highlight it and remember it better. I always like to have everything flush. Okay, let's see here. This movie asks the question, are we losing control of our democratic republic from within by communist infiltrators disguising and seeding their ideals and social issues, gay marriage, environmentalism, education, feminism, religion, to reach us and most easily our children? If you believe that the film Infiltration is well established on a macro basis across all avenues of American society, if you believe the film, okay. So please do not focus on the one issue that affects your personal views. Look at the big picture. Hey, I'd forgotten I read that. I actually said the same thing the other day. If there's one thing you don't like, don't throw everything else out. So this movie will help you connect the dots as to what is going on in our country right before our eyes right now. The movie weaves a thread all the way from Karl Marx, ooh, isn't that interesting, and through the UN to the U.S. White House and every branch of government, school system, environmentalism, gays, etc. Okay, what I'm looking for is where they talk about. I gotta say this started out really good. This is the beginning by Ronald Reagan. Hello, in the traditional motion picture story, villains are usually defeated, and the ending is a happy one. I can make no such promise for the picture you're about to watch. The story isn't over. You and the audience are part of the conflict. I need to use that at the beginning for one of my videos. That's good stuff. That's how this documentary started out. What I'm looking for here is where she talks about, ooh, this is good. This book was A Naked Communist. It had 45 current communist goals. Goal number 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. Remember, the people who rule the world that own the media, all they have to do is create a bunch of sitcoms where they portray people that are promiscuous and have tendencies that one would say are not satisfying their needs, and present them as, oh, look how great they are, it's normal, it's okay. So this is something that, again, this is what really gets me. People don't realize that we're brainwashed, bombarded by bullshit throughout our lives, slowly changing our perspective on how things are. That's how easily we are controlled. The Fabian Socialist, I'm sure I'm going to get some hate comments from people that are feminists or gays now. Let's read this, what it says about feminists. And that goes right along with the feminists of today, which was part of the Frankfurt School's desire to destroy a patriarchal society for a matriarchal society. In other words, remove the father as the loving provider, discipliner, discipler, leader of the home, where you install virtues and integrity and modesty. And that's been broken down on purpose because they knew if they could destroy the family, they could destroy a nation. And instead of having a father that leads and disciplines, leads and disciples that protect the home and provide for the family, the government steps in as a nanny state. The homosexual movement, I'm a student of communism, and the communists set up various groups and societies. Their society that they set up to promote homosexuality in this country was called the Mattachine Society. It was founded by Henry Hay, a leading member of the Communist Party. So since I was studying communism and teaching on the issues of communism, you just follow leads, and all of a sudden you realize that this is the Mattachine. I never heard of the Mattachine Society. Well, it was Henry Hay's organization set up to infiltrate the culture of the United States to make homosexuality normal. Now, I'm not against homosexuals. Don't think I'm homophobic. If you look at my schematic, all right, let's take a look at my schematic. Let me explain this as simplistically as I can. If we look at my schematic, we have 12 essential needs, pieces 22 to 35. Okay, now let me show you where this goes real quick. Okay, 22 to 35, they're in yellow. Number 22 is sex, procreation. We have a need to procreate. When we satisfy that need to procreate, which is piece 32, it's going to come over here as piece 81. Where's 81? Nope, I mean 91, sorry. 91, lack of or inappropriate sex procreation. So that's 91. That's if we don't do it. If we do it, then that would be 71. There are 20 different. So if we have sex the way we're supposed to, not with dead people, not with animals, not with the same sex, then we're satisfying that need. We need to procreate. So this is how I look at it. I just look at it naturally. Are we satisfying our needs? Is it natural? Or is it unnatural? Well, if we're not procreating, all the other sex is unnatural. And I'm not judging here. In fact, when we look at this right here, if you're masturbating, guess what? You're not procreating. It's no different than, this is how I look at it, it's no different than having sex with animals. It's no different than having sex with dead people. It's no different than having sex with the same sex. If you're not having sex and you're procreating, you're not satisfying that need. So I'm not being judgmental. I look at it very scientifically. The point here is that the rules of the world are saying, well, don't look at this as something unnatural. They're just born that way. That's not true. We know that they're putting hormones in our food that feminize women and hyper feminize the women. Dr. Pottinger proved that cats fed the cooked food. The males had homosexual tendencies. He'd put them on raw food, and those symptoms would go away. We're not born this way. This is something that's learned. This is behavior that we're learned. I know people are going to really take offense to this. And I'm not, again, judging anybody. I'm just saying that there are signs when we don't promote normal, natural sexual behavior, we don't have 72, we have 92. And that means that we have a problem. Think about it. If everyone on this planet only had sex with animals, dead people, and same sex, and they masturbated, our species would be extinct. It's one of our needs. I'm not condoning it. We don't live in a natural world anymore, where we don't have an outlet for normal sexual relationships like they would be if we weren't living in such a sick world. So I'm going on and on about that subject. I didn't think I'd go into that. But again, the point I'm trying to make here is that if we end up with a 103, I look at having sex with dead people the same thing as I do people who have heart attack or heart disease or cancer. They're not satisfying their needs and they have a problem. Oh, you're saying I have a problem because I'm gay? Well, our society does. If everyone thinks like you, yes. And have we seen gays throughout our history? Well, after the fall of mankind, yeah, we have seen it. Did it exist prior to the fall of mankind? Good question. Can't go back there and find that out. But again, the thing is, the people who rule the world want us to think it's just natural. And the point I guess I'm really trying to make here is that this is on the increase. There's more of it. And it's just like heart disease on the increase. It's just like cancer on the increase. It's an increase in a symptom by not satisfying our needs. Again, I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying we either are satisfying our needs or we're not. Okay, so that again comes from the agenda. Martin Luther. The main reason why I brought this file up was to point out that she explains, here it is right here. This is what I was looking for. Time has only allowed me to present a fraction of what I found. The reason I call this film Agenda is because I wanted to make clear a distinction between what I was researching and all the conspiracy theories out there. The dictionary says a conspiracy is an evil plan formulated in secret by two or more persons. But an agenda is simply a list of things to be done. At every turn of my investigation, I found agendas by people and groups of the left outlining their plan in their own words. They've been doing most of this right out in the open. Again, that goes back to the white papers I was telling you about. This is interesting right here. Here's a comment. JR, materialism is the wrong mentality, is an exchange mentality, and the solution is not one of our 10 subsequent needs from having a weak, and the solution is not one of our 10 subsequent needs from having a weak connection to everything around us, religion and our spirituality. No, the solution is for all of us to strengthen our connection so that we can change our mentality back to a gift mentality, and we won't have any more subsequent needs. And then there's no more bullshit about forgiving our sins versus correcting our mistakes. So the whole purpose of all of my videos is to help us understand that we got to get reconnected. We got to strengthen our connection to the divine. This is not no mere sentimental religiosity. It's not about satisfying our subsequent need for religion. These are subsequent needs because we're disconnected. The solution is always the same. We got to get reconnected. And that's where the first of my three-step process comes to play, because it's really hard to stop eating the wrong food. But we can take a solid food vacation and we'll see results maybe 10 times faster. And then when we go through this transformation, we'll change the approach we've been using, realizing that the systems in charge are not the solution, that we're being controlled through the medical system. And if the truth was to surface, it would destroy the medical system. It would destroy the rules of the world. Their house of cards would come tumbling down. Because everything in our society of any significance has everything to do with our health. Period. Either we're getting reconnected or we're getting distracted. The only time we want to be distracted is when we're working downstream in addition to working upstream. Upstream, got to satisfy all of our needs. And downstream, we've got to undo the damage that's been done by these Satanists who are using usury. So the first place we start is to do away with usury, is to do away with a debt-based currency. Remember what John Adams said. There's two ways to conquer a nation. One is by the sword, and the other is by debt. And they couldn't do it if we're healthy. So that's why the shaman and witch doctors, those are the first con artists. And the modern day con artists today are our modern day so-called medicine man. Doctors. They're not our experts. They've been intentionally misdirected on purpose so they can in turn misdirect us. They've been duped so they can dupe us. And they're victims just like the rest of us. So my friends, it's time to get excited. I know this is a really long video. It's time to do the first of my three-step process. If you haven't done so already, go down below and look at the description box, and you can go to a seminar I put together. And if you like this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. If you like me going through my files like this, comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and you like my message, whether it's about health or it's about how the world is run, subscribe to my channel so you can get more information. And then if there's anything you don't like, don't throw it out, just like the gal said in the agenda Grinding Down America. You're gonna find something you don't like that I say, whether it's what I say about the gays or what I say about feminism. I'm not being judgmental in any way. I'm just saying that there's always behind everything that's trying to solve our problems. Once again, as H.L. Mencken said, behind everything is a hidden agenda. And it's all in disguise. To control us. To read the quote verbatim, The urge to save humanity is almost always a false face for the urge to rule it. So what happens is people get offended if you think that feminism is a just cause, and it is. It is. But that's how they're tricking us. Don't get fooled and tricked. Remember, these people have been studying this for a long time. They've had access to knowledge we don't have, and history we don't have. And we don't need all that history. All we need to do is realize that there is one thing stronger than all the armies in the world. That's an idea as time has come. That's the first of my 3-step process. Go down below, watch the seminar if you haven't done so already. And I guarantee you, my friends, when you do this, you're in for a treat.